And it is Tuesday morning. This is the morning, Mouring. I think I spelled that wrong, but it is fine. I am a writer, not a spelling bee contestant. And this is the In the Hump podcast. As always, I am Jake Mendel, and I am joined by the one, the only, Joshua Houtz. And Josh, let's start with the biggest news of the day. The Boston Red Sox are the 2018 World Champions.
I can't tell if you're serious. I do not care at all about baseball. But if you're if you're a Red Sox fan, congrats, man. I'm sure you're running around naked or doing whatever Boston folks do when they win the World Series.
That was definitely me in 2004. Probably my most, like, the sports memory I remember the most is it kind of is all of being a Dolphins fan put into one night. It was the night Aaron Boone hit the home run. It was 2003. I was in third grade. I was 9 years old, and I remember waking up in the morning because I was so young. I didn't understand that your team isn't always going to win, and most of the time they're going to lose. So, I get up, I turn on Sports Center, and I'm like jumping up and down because I'm like, I know the Red Sox won this game. I know the Red Sox won this game. And when I saw Aaron Boone hit that home run, that prepared me for a very long time of being a Dolphins fan. So let's jump into it here. I think the Houston Texans just scored another touchdown.
It was embarrassing. I don't know what the heck the Dolphins were doing. Every time on primetime, they just go out there and they just play like complete garbage. So it was to be expected, but Deshaun Watson just had his way with them. More touchdown passes than he had incompletions. Lamar Miller had his revenge game. It was ugly, and as a Dolphins fan, it's exactly what you expect. A 3-0 start, completely washed away. We're 4-4, and mediocre as always.
It's horrible. It is so horrible because Adam Gase is so bad in primetime games, which is always tough because you're the only game on TV. There, you should at least be able to show something because nothing is worse than when you get the national guys, sitting there and shitting on your team because most of the time they're 100% right, but it's just feeding it more and more. At least like when it's on Sunday, you only get like what? There's like 10, 12 other games on. So you only get a small percentage of what is actually happening compared to when it's just the spotlight is on you. And I don't understand it. How in prime time this team just shits the bed. I thought they looked like a pretty good matchup against the Texans. Lamar Miller isn't that great of running back. We can say that firsthand as Dolphin fans. And running backs, other than Adrian Peterson, maybe Frank Gore, running backs don't get better as they get older. So I thought this team had a good chance to come out and play well. But I guess to play well, you actually need to cover players. And I guess the Dolphins don't want to do that.
Yeah, and like you said, the worst part of it is, I'm sure a lot of your friends and family and coworkers, they know you're a Dolphins fan. So then when they go out there, you're talking about it all day, get to go home and watch the Dolphins. They're going to go home and watch them. And then they just go out there and play like shit. It's like almost like it's reflecting upon you, and they just look at you and they're like, for real, this is the team you root for. This is the team you're always talking about. So, as much as it is that these national guys are going to go out there and say what they will about the Dolphins, when you go into work the next day and everyone, what the hell did the Dolphins do? We had hoped there with that Danny Amendola touchdown pass. We all were just, we're down we're only down 4 points now. And then I think the very next drive, 2 plays later, was when I believe it was Howard tried to pass off DeAndre Hopkins to absolutely nobody. The safety was completely lost, and he had an 70 or 80 yard touchdown pass. That was the Dolphins summed up in a nutshell. They go out there and have this awesome play. This play gets you super stoked, and then they just lay an egg.
It's horrible. It's horrible because I even had, it's the worst because you have the friends that aren't like diehard football fans, and they're texting you. I have a buddy who's a Cowboys fan, and he just texts me. He's just like, "Wow, the Dolphins suck." Just after Will Fuller just scored a touchdown and they're going up. It's like, dude, I know, but you just traded a first-round pick for Amari Cooper. It's so like that. That's kind of the part where we can kind of take a little bit of we can pump the brakes a little bit. Is the fact that this entire league, other than maybe 3-4 teams, is a shit show, and the Dolphins didn't lose any ground. But I want to sit on the defense for a second because it starts with Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I think it ends with Minkah Fitzpatrick, and it kind of describes how the Dolphins are as a team. He has about 15 missed tackles on the season, which is a little concerning, sure. But what's more concerning is that he's playing 50% of snaps. He did 54% of snaps against the Texans, and the defense looked terrible. But he has the best coverage percentage in the league. Quarterbacks throwing against him has a 50 QBR. That is the best in the league. Forget every good cornerback. Forget every good safety linebacker. Minkah Fitzpatrick is the best. And I guess the question I have for you, and I guess more specifically Adam Gase, what is the plan for him? Because when we look at Dolphins first round picks without a plan, the two that come to my mind are Deion Jordan, who you move up to number 3, which might have been the steal of the century because they barely had to trade anything to move up 9 spots, and then Charles Harris. These are two guys, ironically both defensive ends, that came into this team without a plan. They were just drafted because they looked nice, I guess. Harris, there was a bunch of defensive ends already, and same with Deion Jordan. You move up to 3 to get him. He's only playing about 8 snaps a game. He's behind Vernon and Wake, and we're wondering, why do you spend so much on these guys if you're not going to play them? And Minkah Fitzpatrick, the only way you're going to get better, the only way you're going to get better at tackling is to see live game speed, and we are just not seeing it from him. So Houtz, what direction do you think they're going to take with Fitzpatrick? Because what they're doing right now isn't the way to go about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I wish I could sit here and tell you a definitive answer as to what their plan is with him. I mean, you said it, 54% of snaps last week, and I mean, we're guys, we enjoy football, we know the X's and O's, we watch the tape, whatever, but we're not the coaches. And from us at home, from my standpoint, I saw Will Fuller absolutely abusing Bobby McCain. And for me, it's easy to say, why didn't Minkah Fitzpatrick go out there? Why didn't you at least give him a chance to cover a Will Fuller? Because I mean, he couldn't have been any worse than a banged-up Bobby McCain. So it's hard to say what this team plans on doing moving forward. I mean, the Deion Jordan, Charles Harris, I mean, those are guys who it's still early, but Charles Harris looks like an absolute bust. I mean, you take a player there, you hope he has an immediate impact, and he can't even get on the field, whether it be injury. He's just a one-trick pony. I mean, he has, a spin move that you see every now and then, and other than that, he's just completely invisible. So for Minkah Fitzpatrick, I mean, you hope to see him move it back to free safety. I mean, I don't know if they're just trying to warrant why they paid TJ McDonald so much money because he looked good in shorts in preseason a couple of years ago, or training camp a couple of years back, but there's no excuse for it. He should be out there 100% of the time, whether it's free safety, nickel, you play him on the boundary, you move him down the box, whatever it is, you got to find a way to get him out there because whether it's missed tackles, like you said, I mean, that's going to happen. I mean, you see him making open field tackles, some of those short plays in the Titans game, he stopped that 4th and goal, I believe it was. There was a 4th and 1, I think he stopped. I mean, he's making plays in the open field that, some other players don't make, but then he's missing those at the same time. I mean, I forget what game it was. Was it Oakland where he tried to completely shoulder into Marshawn Lynch and he just got abused. So, I mean, he's still young. He's still going to make those plays, but he is one of the best players on that defense, and they need to find a way to get him out there because it's just not working doing what they're doing with him. I mean, 54% of snaps last week, that's unacceptable.
Yeah, and so you're right about McDonald. I always try to defend him because I always kind of enjoyed how he played the bulky shoulders, the heavy hits. It's something you kind of want in your secondary. But he just looks slow, and the weirdest part about the contract they gave him is they can't even cut him. They can't even cut him until after the 2019 season, because if you cut him, his dead cap number is actually bigger than his cap hit number next year. And we don't want Fitzpatrick just to get lost in the shuffle, because even when they drafted Laramie Tunsil, it wasn't like, they had a guy in front of him in Braden Albert, but they were still able to get him onto the field, and he turned into one of the best guards in the league. And, it might have stunted his growth at safety just a little bit. But what it did is it allowed him to get on the field. It allowed him to understand how to play in the NFL. And we're like kind of stuck with McDonald, and it stinks because you mentioned, getting ran over by Marshawn Lynch. The Dolphins are missing a tackle on like 28% of running plays. I don't understand how that is actually possible.
Yeah, and you don't know if that's, scheme, whether it's something with the coaching or it's just the players going out there and executing poorly. You saw Kerryon Johnson and the Lions, I think they rushed for 234 yards. Last week we saw Lamar Miller do the same. Chicago and Cincinnati. I mean, teams are just going out there and just running at will. So it's, the run defense started out, I thought, pretty good, at least from what we thought it would be after they lost to Ndamukong Suh. Vincent Taylor looked good. Devon Godshaw, and I think Cam Wake, from a stat I saw a few days ago, is doing his best against the run this season. So it's troubling, and I don't know that these 10 days are going to solve it, because Adam Gase, I mean, he goes out there and he has his vanilla press conferences and things just, it's not on the defense. It's not this thing or that, but he isn't pinpointing what it is, and I just don't know if they can make the adjustments because I think Matt Burke's in over his head. I don't think he was ready for that job. I think Vance Joseph moving to Denver kind of, pushed him up there into the starting defense coordinator. He went up there to become the defense coordinator, but it's just something got to change because it's just what's costing us games. And if they want to turn the season around, it needs to start this week against the Jets.
Yeah, and they have a great matchup against the Jets. And here's one more Minkah Fitzpatrick stat that just came in from Ryan Smith, our good old buddy at Pro Football Focus, who covers the Dolphins. The last time Minkah Fitzpatrick allowed a touchdown was September 2nd, 2017, Week 1 against FSU. And that was on a 3-yard fade route. So that means Fitzpatrick played almost 600 covered snaps between then at Alabama and Miami that he has not allowed a touchdown. And it's just, dude, it's stressful. And I'm kind of, I don't know how I feel about the Vance Joseph, Matt Burke. I think the defenses have kind of been the same because the one thing that made the Dolphins so special in 2016, because they weren't a good run defense. They weren't even a good pass defense, but what they did is they had turnovers. And we're kind of seeing that over the last 5 weeks as the Dolphins have kind of sputtered out of control. They're not getting those turnovers anymore. They've always given up the big play yardage, and it was talked about early in the season how they were one of the best red zone defenses. And that just isn't the case anymore. I don't know if that is because, we have a Herb Vincent Taylor, or teams are realizing, oh wait, our no-name second tight end is going to score 2 touchdowns a week against this team for whatever reason. If it's Jerome Baker getting caught on the option routes, I guess, is a good way to talk about it, because it's the one step one way. Baker's ankles get broken, and he goes outside wide open for a touchdown. I saw this on Twitter a little bit, and I want to ask your opinion about it. There's the Cam Wake truthers going around who are saying, basically defensive ends need to get pressures, and everything needs to go right to get sacks. And my argument for that is that's total bullshit. Because a defensive end's job isn't to get pressures, it is to get sacks, it is to make plays. Obviously, you can make the argument that other things need to happen if you're always getting double teamed. But there are players like Von Miller. I remember Cam Wake in his prime. These players made the play every time. They got sacks because that is their job. You're supposed to be an elite player. Obviously, Wake's getting older, but to sit here and defend him and to say the pressures and he's doing his job, I just don't agree about it. Agree with it, I guess. What is your opinion on the matter?
Yeah, I think that's just sugarcoating. You're trying to polish a turd because Cameron Wake, he's one of our favorite Dolphin players. What he's done since coming over here, Jeff Ireland signed him from the CFL, it's been incredible. He's been a pass rush nightmare for opposing defensive coordinators and quarterbacks. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You need to go out there as a defensive end. Cameron Wake, that's his specialty, rushing the passer, getting those quarterback sacks, and it's just not happening. I think a lot of this poor defense can be attributed to that. You traded a 4th-round pick, which I still think is good value for Robert Quinn. Mm-hmm. Robert Quinn looked like a freaking – he looked almost unstoppable in preseason, and where has that gone? It's frustrating to see Cam Wake. As much as you love the guy, you don't wonder if his name's being dangled out there in trade talks because this does appear to be, if he doesn't get traded, this does appear to be his last year in Miami, in my opinion, because, they just can't keep paying him. He's just getting up there in age and starting to stunt the growth of some of those guys that, maybe a Charles Harris would play more when he's healthy if a Cam Wake wasn't here. So I do think that's just a nice way of sugarcoating things. And sure, getting pressures, that's great, but the sacks are why they're getting paid, and it's what the Dolphins need because those aren't happening, and that's why the defense is getting picked apart. Deshaun Watson, again, 5 touchdowns. That's all I got to say about that.
And Deshaun Watson is the perfect transition to talk about the offense because what Watson did is he was able to make so many pass rushers look silly, just breaking tackles, dodging sacks left and right, and we don't really see that from, obviously not the Brockett ship because he's kind of a tree, I guess we'll go with out there, and Tannehill just doesn't seem to have the backyard style of football to feel a pressure and make it and dodge it. We saw a little bit early on. But I'm going to go back to what I've mentioned before here is a Louis Riddick quote of any player in the NFL can flash, but the good ones can do it consistently. So before we get into the quarterback talk, because I don't think that's nearly the beginning of the issue for the Dolphins, why on earth are we throwing to Frank Gore on 4th down? Why are we doing that when he's averaging 4 yards a carry?
See, this is one of the benefits of having a child because when they're in the room, you just can't just lose your freaking mind because I have no idea. I mean, people want to point and say, okay, he was held, pass interference, whatever. Dude, why the I'm allowed to swear, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Dude, why the fuck are you not giving it to Brock Osweiler? The dude is a fucking giraffe. He can literally just fall forward and get the first down. We saw it. I think it was a Cincinnati game, one of those games. I just don't understand why Adam Gase is so reluctant to, run up the middle or just let the quarterback do the easy thing there. I mean, I have no idea why he threw that football, why he called that play. I don't even know if there was another option on that play. I think it was going to Frank Gore all along. And even if he called, he was probably stopped short. So I like the play call. I like that he had the balls to go for it. But that was just fucking terrible. And I have no idea what he was thinking. I was ready to run through a wall. I'm ready to do it right now. Like Adam Gase, it's moves like that people start to question whether or not you're the right fit because it's such a simple decision. Give it to freaking Frank Gore. It's no different than when they got down there at the goal line against Chicago. I mean, I know Gore was gashed, but come on, don't he always does this shit. He overthinks it. They're running a read option out, shotgun on 4th and 1. I don't know. It's just who Adam Gase is, and it's something that we're gonna see the rest of the year. I mean, we better get used to it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going to use a Kid Cudi quote here because I think it just describes it perfectly. Is the ones who make it complicated never get congratulated. And that's kind of what the Dolphins have been for a couple of years now. It just, Gase needs to be comfortable taking the easy route. Sometimes you can get away with running it up the middle for a touchdown or a QB sneak for a first down, or even in the red zone. My dad always talks about this. Run a naked bootleg. We saw Cam Newton score a touchdown on that on Sunday, and that's something I kind of wish the Dolphins had done forever. Just these simple plays where you don't need 17 options. Everyone talks about how great Sean McVay is, and I'm not gonna sit here and say he isn't. But one of the things they do is they make everything look complicated just for it to be a Todd Gurley run up the middle. You don't need the crazy plays left, right, yada, yada, yada. Run it up the middle. Plays like that, if you are getting the yardage up the middle every single play, keep doing it until they stop you because that's what teams are doing to the Dolphins defense, and clearly they can't stop them. So Frank Gore has been very good. I will admit that. But he gets his 4 yards a carry, and that's literally because he gets 4 yards a carry. When you think of a player averaging 4 yards a carry, it isn't because it's because it's the average, not consistently 4 yards a carry. But maybe they'll get stuffed a couple times, but then they'll break one for 20 yards, and that's kind of what Kenyan Drake is. And I think that's why he needs to be more involved with the offense because when you get those 20-yard plays, we've seen it over the last 2 weeks. They're using Drake a little bit more. It limits penalties. It limits errors. When you're getting this chunk yardage, there's more room for mistakes, and I just don't understand why Drake, even with all these injuries, isn't being used as much as he should.
Yeah, it's almost like they go into it with a pitch counter. Like they tell these guys, okay, we're going to make sure it's 50-50 and you both are going to get your touches. Because, I mean, no one can argue Kenyan Drake. He has that big play potential every time he touches the football. It's just something Frank Gore doesn't have. I'm not sure if he did, 10 years ago. He was never really that guy that was just going to beat you with his legs. He was going to make plays, in the open field. Frank Gore is a bulldozer. He's the thunder. Kenyan Drake's the lightning. He's the future. He's the thing that the Dolphins need most on offense, in my opinion, because you got the Ryan Tannehills, you got the Brock Osweilers. What does every mediocre quarterback need? A good running back. And Kenyan Drake is that. Adam Gase thought it enough to, get rid of Jay Ajayi and throw him to Philly, which – I mean, yeah, now it looks good because his knee blew out like everyone expected. But, I mean, you thought Kenyan Drake was that type of superstar player. He had that potential, and you're just not using him the way he can be. You see it a little bit against Houston. You see the flashes. You see the big runs. You see the big catches, and then he's out of the game. He vanishes. I mean, that Cincinnati game, I think the Dolphins, and yes, it was Frank Gore, but they were just running the ball at will, and then they came out in the second half up how many points, and they just abandoned the run. And it's just something that – it's frustrating to watch because it seems so simple. I mean, yes, Kenyan Drake's going to dance around the backfield and try to look for those big plays, and maybe he's going to get 1 or 2 yard losses every now and then. But he's going to make that big play, and he does something that, there are very few backs in the NFL that can do. So he needs to be part of this offense a hell of a lot more than he is. And if you brought Frank Gore in and you had a handshake, I'm going to give you this many carries, go ahead and do that. But get it out of the way early so Kenyan Drake can do what he does because the Dolphins aren't going to win football games unless that guy's touching the football.
No doubt, no doubt. And it's just it's just so interesting because I'd love to see Frank Gore break him, and he does sometimes, but his quote unquote big gains are anywhere between 12 and 15 yards, and Kenyan Drake's go from 50 to 60, and that's kind of what makes up for a Brock Osweiler overthrow or something like that. So one of the surprises for me, at least, during the game was DeVante Parker balled. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask you this: would you rather have him or $9 million on the cap next year?
Man, I'm going to go with DeVante Parker. If you were asking me if I'd rather have DeVante Parker or $9 million for myself, I mean, that's an easy choice. I don't think that I think we as fans overview that the whole money situation. We're paying this guy this and that. It's not our money. And DeVante Parker, he looked like the number one wide receiver that the Dolphins drafted him there. I think it was 14th overall. I mean, he looked the part of everything that you've wanted him to. And sure, yeah, it was because Albert Wilson was hurt. Kenny Stills was hurt. I mean, he was kind of forced into that role, but that's the way that he needs to be utilized. And I think Adam Gase realized that. I don't know if it was because of the spat with the agent. Maybe he's trying to drive up his trade value, but they went out there and they targeted him. And you saw Adam Gase on the sideline. He was in Parker's ear. So he has that potential. You just hope that he can put it all together and, consistently stay healthy and go out there and do this day in and day out. Because if you're going to tell me I'm going to get that DeVante Parker, 10 out of the 16 games, and the other games he's going to have, 60 yards and maybe a touchdown. Sign me up for that all day because you're not going to get that for $9 million.
Yeah, it's kind of for me, it's a little tough. It's interesting you bring up the Wilson contract and the Amendola contract are two that I really like to look at. I have some buddies who kind of asked me when they made those signings, like, aren't they paying these guys a little too much? And we do kind of overanalyze money quite a bit because when you look at those contracts and like the big money they're given, they are. The Wilson contract is 4% of the total cap, and Dan Amendola is 2%. And you could argue, well, if you do that 25 times, your cap is used up completely, and you only have 25 guys on your roster. But there are so many rookies involved and things like that. So these numbers are easily movable. Yada yada yada. Amendola is a guy who could be cut. I don't think that's going to happen. But we do overanalyze money too much. But at the same time, I don't want another year of being just hoodwinked by DeVante Parker. If he does ball out for like the rest of the season and looks like a guy we can count on, sure, let's use that 5th-year option. Let's keep him around. But I just don't. If the season ended today, I don't think I'd do it. I don't think I'd trust that enough. I'd rather go sign. There's trade whispers of an Emmanuel Sanders. I know that's probably not going to happen anymore. But just someone like that, I just don't know if we can trust that all season. Moving on, we got Brock came back down to earth a little bit. One kind of bad interception that he threw towards Danny Amendola, and you could argue, yeah, he was held a little bit, yada, 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 but it was overthrown either way. But he's definitely not the reason the Dolphins lost the game. As we move on, 3 yards per carry is reporting that Tannehill's probably not going to be looked at till near the end of the week, and that's a tough turnaround for a game Sunday. So are you confident with Brock, say, if we have to deal with him a couple more weeks?
Yeah, just one more quick thing with DeVante Parker. I agree with you. I'm sick of being hoodwinked. The fool's gold. If today the season was ending today, there's no way I'd pick up that option. Mm-hmm. As for Brock Osweiler, I mean, I don't think anybody can argue that pre-snap and the way he controls himself in that huddle and the way he understands that offense, that it's not significantly better than what we've seen from Ryan Tannehill. I mean, he doesn't have the arm strength that Tannehill has, doesn't have the mobility. His pocket presence might be a little better, but overall, Ryan Tannehill's a superior athlete. But what you see Brock Osweiler in that offense, he just looks like he has a great understanding and control of it that we haven't seen. And I think if it's true that they are going to evaluate him, late in the week, and he's probably not going to make that Jets game, and he might not make the game after that. I mean, at what point do you just say, okay, here, the season's over, let's just ride it out with Brock Osweiler? And I don't think that he's their best option to win games. I don't think if Ryan Tannehill does become healthy that you can say, okay, I have a better shot with Brock Osweiler, because from a skill set, I just don't think that's true. But I'm highly surprised at how well he's played. I guess that's the best way to say it. And going out there, and I think he was kind of a laughing stock around the NFL. I think I know myself personally didn't like the guy at all. But just the way he carries himself, in the huddle, the way it looks like the team plays around him, and the way he goes out there during his press conferences. I mean, I'm pretty surprised at how well he's done. And if that's who we have to root for the rest of the year, I'm on it. Are we? I don't know if we're going to talk about it later on, but are we even in the hunt anymore? I mean, this season feels like we're freaking 0-8 at this point.
We are currently the 8th seed, so yes, we are,
Yeah,
Joshua.
we're
We are in the hunt,
in
and
the hunt.
and that's what I think. And so that's such a. You have been great with giving me segues today because that brings up my favorite segment. We started it last week, and it's called "What's a Worst Take." And last week it was about Dwayne Wade wearing Bears gear versus Tannehill smiling after the game. So this week we're gonna go. What's a worse take? The Dolphins should be buyers at the trade deadline, or the Dolphins should be sellers at the trade deadline.
I'm gonna go with that they should be sellers because I mean this is the Miami Dolphins. We're 4-4, and I mean you don't want to just say the season's over because we're not the Oakland Raiders, we're not the Cleveland Browns, we're not some of these teams who absolutely have no chance at salvaging their season. The Dolphins are 4-4, and we've seen Adam Gase before riddle off these huge win streaks. I think they did back in 2016 when they made the playoffs. So it isn't out of the realm of possibility. But at the same time, if a team's calling around for Cam Wake, I know Sutton threw out a Rashad Jones. If they're calling out for these players and they're going to pony up and give you if you're going to get a second round pick for Rashad Jones, I don't care if you think you're in the hunt or not. I mean, personally, I think that's right where it would start for me. A second round pick, Rashad Jones, okay. I would hate to do it, but I think that's where it is. Anything less, I'm not doing it. A DeVante Parker, a third or a fourth. You know what I mean? So I don't think that they should go out there and just blow the team up. I don't think they should sell just to sell. Although, I'm playing devil's advocate here. If they want a quarterback, it's almost something they have to do. Like if they plan on drafting a quarterback next year, which you said it on Twitter today, I don't think that's the best bet. I think you mentioned Teddy Bridgewater. We were both kind of joking about that. I think if Adam Gase wants to salvage his job and have a competitive season, I don't think they can go all in on a rookie quarterback because unless you're getting a Justin Herbert or one of these guys up there at the top of the draft, they're just not going to come in and have that kind of impact. So I know I kind of spitballed there, but for me, no, I would not be sellers unless the price is right and you have your eye on a quarterback that you are absolutely 100% going after in the draft.
Yeah, Gase came out in his press conference today and he said he believes he has the right players on his team currently. And that is why I spoke about this, that I thought, I kind of said this jokingly, and this is in the hunt. We are in the misery of being in purgatory for the last 40 years of just the Dolphins just finishing within 7 and 9 wins, somewhere right in there. So I'm going to go with what's the worst take. I'm going to say both. Because the Dolphins are 4-4, they're probably going to do the same thing in the second half of the season. They're going to be 8-8. They're going to be in the hunt because that's what we're used to. You mentioned trading these guys away. I don't think anyone's going to see the Wake nonsense. The pressures are good enough as a reason to trade for him. Maybe if you can a late round pick, but he's not on the team next year. He's not under contract, so I think he stays. Rashad, he's kind of damaged goods. He's playing with an injury. I know every team has those guys, but I don't think you want to trade for a guy like that. Parker, they said they don't want to trade either. So when I look at that, you're 100% right. They're not going to draft a rookie next season. Well, they're going to draft a rookie. They're not going to draft a quarterback next season. I made a joke early in the season that the Dolphins should become buddy-buddy with Arizona because they drafted their guy in Rosen this year, so they're going to be able to trade down. We look at the Rams did it a couple years ago, I believe, where the Washington moved up and the Rams were able to get a bunch of pieces. So I don't think they're going to do anything. I kind of like the Bridgewater idea. It is kind of joking, and people kind of came at me on Twitter, but it's not. It's like you're not selling the season because the 4 guys with the lowest completion percentage in the NFL right now are all the rookie quarterbacks, the first round guys. So they aren't going to make the Dolphins good next year. And so when you look at a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, you wonder, how the Saints going to give him up for after trading a 3rd round pick for him. They sold away their soul for their 1st round pick this year. They are going all in this year. They did that just in case if Breeze goes down this year, Bridgewater will be there to back him up. I kind of see him as a feel-good Miami story. I think it'd be kind of cool. He won't be too expensive. And people are like, oh, another classic lateral move by the Dolphins. Well, if it is, then you get your quarterback next year in a room where there's in a draft where there's probably going to be a couple more guys than just maybe 1 or 2 like you mentioned at the top. It's just weird where we're stuck. We are so freaking stuck this season. I say it jokingly, they're gonna go 4-4 again, but they're going to. They're gonna probably beat the Jets this week. They'll probably beat the Bills once. They'll probably lose to the Bills once, and then they'll probably beat a team like an injured Packers team and pull another game out somewhere. And just sit there at 4-4 when we know if you go 5-3, you're probably in the playoffs.
Yeah, that Packers game, that you nailed it. I mean, they're going to end up winning that freaking game, and everyone's going to get their hopes up, and they're just going to implode after that. I mean, I like the Teddy Bridgewater idea, I think, and I did mean that when I said it. I quoted your tweet, and I do think the Dolphins, they should have already have had Teddy Bridgewater on the roster. I know a lot of people said, why do you want two injury-prone? Well, people didn't even think Ryan Tannehill was injury-prone, which that's a discussion for another time. But, they wondered why you'd bring in two guys who their health was in question. But Teddy Bridgewater, when he's healthy, he's a pretty good quarterback. I'd like to see that DeVante Parker connection that they had there at Louisville. So it'd be fun. I don't think it'll go down at the deadline, although if it did, it would give me a lot more hope for the second half of this season because, Teddy Bridgewater, he's got that mobility. He's got the arm. And then, he balls out. Then you have your quarterback next year and maybe for the foreseeable future. I think it's sad what happened to Tannehill. I know we didn't discuss this, but I think it's kind of sad what happened with him because it does seem like his Dolphins career, if not over this next year, definitely in 2020 because they can't pay that man. So I think it's crazy, and I think this 4-4, these last 8 games, it's going to tell a lot about Adam Gase. I don't think he's on the hot seat, but, some moves definitely have to be made. If the Dolphins blow that 3-0 start, they go out there, he can spin it however he wants, but he put himself with Ryan Tannehill. That was his guy. He thought that he could win games with him. He brought in a Jay Cutler. He brought in Brock Osweiler. Those were his guys that he picked. You said he talked about how he thinks this roster has those players, and he likes what he sees. Well, of course he does because he handpicked them. So I think if he said anything else, he'd be kind of putting his foot in his mouth. So it'll be interesting to see. I think the deadline's tomorrow, right? Is it 4 o'clock?
4 o'clock tomorrow. Well, It's probably going to be today when this is released.
So the deadline's coming up later this afternoon around 4 o'clock, and we'll see if the Dolphins make any of those splashy moves that some of these fans want and others expect to see.
Yeah, and the one we'll start wrapping it up, but the one that we kind of mentioned it before, do not put Jameis Winston anywhere near my team. Don't make it that much worse. Jesus Christ, how are people even thinking about that? You mentioned it where Tannehill kind of got the short end of the stick. Now every quarterback's being linked to Miami. And I don't think that's logical. You mentioned it too, how before the season nobody wanted to say Tannehill's injury prone, and now he's the most injury prone quarterback. And as always, the truth is somewhere in the middle. He's just not a guy you can rely on. It's not really what you want out of a franchise quarterback, and that's okay. He's probably a top tier backup quarterback, and as we saw with the Nick Foles last year, that's definitely something we want. Give me one super flashy hot take trade you could see happening tomorrow.
We're talking Dolphins or just in general?
Talking Dolphins.
Oh, man. All right, I'm going to go out on a limb. There ain't no way it's going to happen, but Derek Carr to the Dolphins. They end up going out there. They give up 2 first-round picks or first and Ryan Tannehill, and they get their quarterback of the future. I think he's already locked up under contract. Some might say he's not an upgrade over Tannehill. I kind of agree with that, but I think in this system – a new scenario. He's up there crying in Oakland. Teammates might have lost some respect for him, whatever. But I think he has the skill set. He's going to get broken up there. And John Gruden, he's acquiring all these picks. You got to think that maybe he has his eye on somebody in the draft. So I'm not sure I'd like to see him end up in the Dolphins or with the Dolphins, but it's something that, that'd be that splashy move that would just get people. I think Twitter would explode if that were to happen.
Yeah, and I remember hearing a lot of coaches say this. A lot of the times you won't see offensive players traded at the deadline because it's a lot harder to pick up an offensive system than it is a defensive system where it's mostly, a bunch of zones, or if he's a pass rusher, obviously he's rushing the passer and things like that. I think Derek Carr would be fun in this offense because you think back to his 2016 season where it was either 2016 or 2015. I think it was 2016 where he lit the world on fire before suffering a broken leg. He's played through a lot of injuries. I think he deserves a chance, and I kind of think the world's been against him. I probably would do it for a first round and Ryan Tannehill package too. I don't know when you can just kind of tank instead of being stuck in that scenario. But at Houtz on Twitter, my internet dad, the one and only employee of the In the Hunt podcast, because Topher wanted to go play basketball tonight, I guess. The heater on, and he wanted to go out and play basketball. Houtz, thank you so much for joining me. It is always fun talking with you.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to do it again soon.
For sure, for sure. And always at MIA in the Hunt on Twitter. I just mentioned at Houtz. I'm at JMendel94. Yell at us. Twitter does enough as it is. We could always use more of it. Always give us those notifications. It's always fun. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify. I was going to say Spotbean, and that's, we maybe just thought of an app. I don't know.
Let's
Spotify.
do it.
Josh, we're not going to be talking to you for the rest of the week, but this is our morning after. We're mourning. We're sad. Give me a projection for the Jets game, and then I'll hang up on you.
All right, Dolphins 31, Jets 17.
Sounds great. I'm probably right in the same boat. This is the In the Hunt podcast, and I hope you all have a lovely night.